What if we stop treating employee happiness as something that needs a business case? I'm Andrew Soren, and on today's episode of Meaningful Work Matters, I'm talking to Bree Groff, the workplace culture expert, consultant, and author of Today Was Fun, a book about work, seriously. Bree has spent her career helping organizations like Microsoft, Google, and Pfizer navigate change, rethink culture, and design better days at work. In this conversation, Bree challenges the way we talk about engagement and well-being. She argues that happiness shouldn't have to prove its worth in productivity numbers, and that a human day, finite and irreplaceable, is meaningful in and of itself. We talk about the tension between fun and hard work, why burnout is often a business model problem, not a people problem, and how leaders can reframe the small, everyday interactions that make work feel more human. And true to her book's title, this one is fun, sharp, warm, and full of real stories about what it means to lead and live with purpose. Welcome to the Meaningful Work Matters podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Soren, founder of Eudaimonic by Design. On this podcast, we'll dive into the world of meaningful work, explore its complexities, and examine its impact on people and the organizations they're a part of. Each episode features insightful conversations with cutting-edge experts who are successfully navigating the challenges of meaningful work. We hope to offer you ideas, frameworks, and tools to unlock potential and design work that's fulfilling, impactful, and supports everyone's well-being. Subscribe or follow us now, and let's make meaningful work matter. Bree Groff, welcome to Meaningful Work Matters. It's a delight to be able to have you on this podcast. Thank you so much.
Yay, Andrew, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
I am excited to have probably quite a wide-ranging conversation about the ways that we think about things like employee well-being, employee engagement at work, and maybe how some of the ways that we typically think about those things maybe need to be challenged a little bit. You've recently published a book, I guess maybe not that recently, but a wonderful book called Today Was Fun, and a book about work that is seriously questioning some of the assumptions that we sometimes make. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But maybe before we get into that, you can just start by telling us a little bit about how you want our audience to know you and what makes your work meaningful.
Sure. Yes. So I am, as you said, a newly-ish published author, came out this summer. And the book is about how we spend our weekdays and how we might be able to spend them better, because I hold the strong belief that 5/7 of our lives each week is far too much to consider only the input to a paycheck, only the input to a company's bottom line. And so it's a fun book, I think, as it should be, a very human book. And based on all of my experiences consulting over the last decade plus. So, my experience is in transformation, culture, employee experience consulting, companies from Google, Pfizer, Microsoft, nonprofits, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and many others. Not to mention leading my own consulting teams. So I've have the unique experience of getting to start up a new consulting team every time there's a new project. So also reflecting on how I know how to have a good day at work and how I can create teams that have really good days at work. So all of that wisdom felt like it wanted to live in a book, and therefore I made it so.
What does make your work meaningful now in this point, as kind of like in the post publication, post writing book kind of phase? What does meaning look like in your life right now?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that fulfillment in work is multifaceted, that you can diversify it. So the most obvious answer is people read the book and then they send me messages telling me that it really shifted their perspective, it really helped them. So the impact feels meaningful. But also the meaning comes from, I just really like the craft of writing. Like, I'm having a fun time doing it, even if no one were to read it, which I don't know, sounds selfish, I suppose, but also I'm a big believer that, like, finding that joy yourself in the process is really important. I also it's been so cool to get to meet so many different people across this industry, you included, of course, who are thinking about these same themes. And yeah, I write in the book, one of the chapters is called "Shoveling Shit is Fun if you like your co-shovelers." So even if I wasn't doing meaningful work, I'm sure doing it with fun people, and that gets me a long way there. So that's just been really cool. All the connections, the cool people. I just feel like I've gotten to join some Illuminati of thinkers in this area, and that's been awesome.
Hmm. I certainly relate to the idea that sometimes just doing it because you love doing it is an incredibly fun reward, even if nobody ever listens. I often think about that with this podcast. Sometimes I'm shocked that people tell me they do listen because I'm just like, I'm just having fantastic conversations with people I'm really inspired by and want to talk to. And you're definitely one of them. In fact, the reason why I invited you onto this podcast, the reason why I read your book to begin with is because I saw a guest blog post you did for this newsletter that we're both, I guess, members of, that is called The House of Beautiful Business, which is
Mhm.
a fantastic, crazy, bizarre, wonderful journey adventure of a newsletter and a whole entire organization for those who might be interested. And you did a post, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago, that was all about the business case for employee engagement should offend you. And I was like, oh, yes, yes, that definitely offends me. So it's a strong stance. I'm curious, like, what does that even mean? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Okay, so first let me say, I've done so much media for the book, and normally, like, I write what I really believe my strongest arguments in the book, but when I'm writing for media, I'm, like, a little bit aware of, like, make it sort of palatable, make it so that the editor doesn't feel like they're gonna get fired. But for House of Beautiful Business, I was talking to Tim, the CEO, about it. He's like, "Give me your, like, spiciest take. Give me the thing that's going to potentially rile people up and offend people." And I was like, "All right, Tim." And my point of view was this, that the business case for employee experience should offend you. And what I mean by that is, look, the business case for people working needs to be obvious, right? If you're gonna employ people, you need to make sure that it's actually driving a business. But the case for why we should care about people's happiness, I started to get, I mean, not just for this article, but over the course of my career, really tired of saying, you should care about people's happiness. You should care about whether people are enjoying their days. Because did you know employee experience increases company productivity by 17%, profitability by 21%? It just felt desperate and needy. And like, why am I having to, like, I am a human talking to another human, and I'm needing to justify why human happiness is an end unto itself. And I'm needing to justify it in terms of money and business terms. It just struck me that I think there's so many, especially consultants. Oh my God, I've been there so many times. CHROs, people in HR and people functions, who have just been so used to making that case to even earn a seat at the table, to earn the client engagement, that we just spit it out and it feels normal. But I think when we step back and say, wait, isn't employee engagement just human happiness in jargon? Why should we have to justify it? It should be an end unto itself. And when we think about what an organization creates and the value exchange, of course, you're exchanging some good or service for money on the customer end, but you're also making an exchange on the employee end. You're exchanging company's money for employees' time. And so if time equals money in business, why do we treat money as the end all and be all, and an employee's time is simply a resource no better than steel?
Mhm.
Oh, I was offended. I wrote it down.
I think it's a really important argument to make, and it's something that I've been thinking a lot about. There is, I don't know if you know the work of Zainab Khan, but I'm a huge fan of her work. She's at MIT Sloan, and also runs a fantastic organization that's called the Good Jobs Institute. And she's written many things over the years about why good jobs are important and what that means and the strategy for good jobs. And she's also, one of her most recent books is The Case for Good Jobs, which kind of looks at, what is that case and how do we convince people and how do we talk about it? And she says that there's really three good reasons why people would care about creating good jobs in the world. And those three reasons are: one, it will increase productivity. And if you increase productivity, it will ultimately impact performance in different kinds of ways. Two, there's a competitive advantage reason to be able to do it. If we ultimately create the context of good jobs in the context of what you and I are talking about, things like happiness, well-being, meaning, if we increase that capacity, it will attract better talent. Maybe your customers will want to buy your products and services more. There is a good competitive advantage story to be able to be told. But the third argument is the moral argument that it's the right thing to do. Like, we are talking about human beings after all. We spend more time at work than doing almost anything other than sleeping in our lives. Like, why wouldn't we care about creating work that has the potential to actually make a positive dent in people's lives? Why wouldn't we be interested in that? Like, it is the morally right thing to do. And it's interesting because I think that those three arguments are all important, but certainly in the context of consulting, in the context of corporate, even in the context of the nonprofit organizations that I've run, that I've been involved with working in, so often that moral argument just fades away. It's the
Mhm.
footnote to the story. It's never the headline. The more work that I do in this space, the more that it feels deeply uncomfortable. I mean, you talk almost about, you kind of like imply the idea that it's almost like cannibalism, that we sometimes eat people alive in the organizations that we're part of.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that acutely, especially when we are the ones like, imagine an HR middle manager making the case that giving people, not overworking people, giving people decent work. For that middle manager making that case to say they're in a presentation to the executive team, "Don't worry, make me happy, make my life decent so that I can make you lots of money." It's kind of gross. I mean, not to I don't mean that offensively to the HR manager, I mean the position that they are put in to only be able to advocate for their finite days on this planet in terms of economic output. And so I think, like, the moral argument, I totally agree. I think of it even as an existential argument. I write a lot in the book about caregiving. I cared for my mother when she had terminal cancer before she passed away, my father with Alzheimer's. I mean, like, when I was in that mental state of days are finite, when you know your days are finite, they are so precious. We forget that Mondays are not a renewable resource. And when we're in the prime of our careers, it often feels like the world revolves around money. We are always eager for more money. And obviously so. Yes, like, we all need a living wage. But the notion that our days are finite still feels very far removed. That's something I'm going to deal with when I'm 80 years old. But if you can bring that a little bit closer, then I think the reflection on the value of each and every human day spent working, now we can think of it in terms of an existential argument. So, for example, in my time consulting, I've had two different team members pass away from cancer. And when I think back on the brief time when I was responsible for how they were spending their days, I'm only thinking about, were those decent days? Like, did we have some fun? Did they laugh on those days? Did they smile? I am not thinking about whether I extracted the most value from them. And so it's these little touch points of sort of existential awakening with my parents or with my team members that for me, like, it's helpful to wake me up to say, "Oh, a human day is precious, it's finite, it's not renewable, and therefore it's worth valuing in and of itself." And now from an organizational perspective, there's always more where those came from, right? 'Cause if one person quits or dies, the organization can go find more. But it's just literally not true from the employee perspective, and so I think there needs to be a more concerted elevation of that argument you mentioned, the moral case, the existential case, that our days matter in and of themselves.
Hmm. There's this ancient Greek term, momentum mori, which is remember you must die, right? Like
Mhm.
just this way of being able to think about the fact that we need to be able to anticipate the fact that our life is precious, and that sometimes death is actually a very helpful reminder of how we can't how we have to seize the day, carpe diem, to use the Latin term. Memento mori is Latin, not Greek. But to be able to have that moment of recognition, it is existential. It is important. It's possibly the most important thing that we can do.
Yeah. It's just if we are going to value our days when they're numbered, and then we can make the logical leap to say, "Oh, when they're numbered or not, they don't feel like they're numbered, they're actually of equal value," then I would hope that we start making that leap to valuing them within organizations.
Hmm.
And and frankly, like, I make the case too that the business case for employee engagement should feel offensive to employees, like, "Oh, I have to justify whether my life is good in business terms," but I think it should also be offensive to leaders.
Mhm.
Like "Oh, if someone's making this case to me, what they're assuming about me is that I only care about money and not about, whether someone is going home and breaking down and their marriage is falling apart and their kids aren't seeing them and their blood pressure is through the roof." Like, we don't see those things because we treat those as the ultimate not safe for work content, but they're there, and I think if more leaders were able to bring those things into their field of vision, and or at least to imagine that those things are true because they are, then ideally we have leaders who don't need to be convinced of the business case. They just genuinely care.
Hmm. So what does it look like? I mean, if you wanted to flip the paradigm, if you wanted to try to be this kind of a human leader, what would that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, so I think there's some things that you could do differently, but also sometimes you could do the exact same things with a different perspective and tone. So what I mean by that, I often give the example of PTO or company closures. So around the holidays and New Year's, a lot of companies will close for a week or whatever it is. And I will hear 2 different talk tracks when January comes around. One talk track is the more normal one. "I hope everybody's coming back rested and rejuvenated. We got a big Q1 ahead, a big year. Hope you're all ready to go." Now, that's talk track 1. What that assumes is that employees were just organizational batteries. I hope you've gone to recharge. That time that you had off, that was not for you. You were supposed to be using that to sleep and rest because, ugh, humans need sleep and rest. A necessary evil. Fine, we will give you time to do that. You better have done that because now it's time to extract from your battery. That's
Now
one
time to
talk.
get to work.
Time to get to work, right? And it's like to say that talk track, it's just so common. It's so painfully common. The other talk track is I really hope everyone had a wonderful time with their family and friends. I hope that if you wanted to travel, you got to travel. If you wanted to rest, you got to rest. I hope that time you build beautiful memories, that you were spending your days exactly how you wanted to. All right, let's get to the agenda. It's not asking anything of that time, and it's just a different perspective. It's a perspective of valuing a person's life beyond needing that time, needing to give that time in some sort of like begrudging exchange. So that's sort of one attitude. But other things that people can do, frankly, like organizing work in ways that actually meet human beings where they are. So that might be, you know, seasonally. We already kind of do this, but like maybe you want to lower your revenue targets for August and December. Very few companies will do this. And I've seen it's just ridiculous to me. Like your revenue targets in December are the same, even though you have half your people taking off half the month. Like let's just work for how people work. Or, like flexibility is another way in which we can honor humans simply because they're humans. And some people will need to knock off early to take their kids from school. Some will need to knock off early because they have a date, and that's fine too. Like, you should be able to prioritize what you want. So, one literal thing, that we had done at SY Partners, the consultancy I was at, is just use this nomenclature golden time. You could put the term golden time on your calendar anytime you had something in your life you wanted to prioritize, and that was well, I don't know, code for everyone else to say like, "Hey, I'm not gonna ask you what that time is about. Maybe it's for therapy, and I'm gonna do my very best to respect it, and only in extreme circumstances, I'm gonna say like, we've got like 19 out of 20 people at this meeting. Is your golden time flexible at all? If not, go take it." It's just giving language and permission to be human and to prioritize your happiness inside and outside of work.
Um, this is a good call out to the fact that the book is actually jam packed with all sorts of very practical, useful, helpful, tactical things that you can try to do to prioritize yourself, to try to think about what is meaningful and fun and enjoyable and brings joy to your work. And so buy it. It's great. Today was fun. If you're looking for that kind of thing, is great. I get one, and as I'm hearing you talk, I've got the voice of a client that I just was speaking to the other day, who was talking about the fact that they really do want to create an environment of well being for their staff. They're also trying to do really important things,
Mhm.
and sometimes just the prioritization of well-being feels like it's at odd with the capacity to have impact and to do something really important.
Mhm.
And that, especially if you're a small organization, I mean, really, if you're any organization, and you need people to show up and work hard to be able to accomplish important and meaningful things, it does to a certain extent take sacrifice. It does to a certain extent take effort. There potentially should be joyful effort, but sometimes there's this perspective that having fun, being happy, taking care of your well-being means taking your foot off the gas.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, how do you reconcile those tensions?
Oh gosh, so many thoughts here. So the first is that, yes, I get this as well, that it's like, oh, well, you could have fun at work, sure, but when are you getting back to work after you have fun? To which I would say the first point is that fun and work are not different things. It's not like fun is happy hours and offsites and work is drudgery. I'll often give the physics definition for work, which is work equals force times distance. And you'll note there's nothing about pain in that equation whatsoever. In fact, we don't get paid because work is painful and people wouldn't do it. We get paid because we create value, because we exert some force that moves something a certain distance. So, I guess the first point would be there's always opportunities to whistle while we work, in other words. I have worked incredibly hard on teams and actually like overworked to a degree that I wouldn't necessarily be proud of nights and weekends, but I wasn't unhappy in that time because we were having a blast together. Like I remember we would come in on a Saturday, again, I don't totally endorse this, but for a season, you need to push hard. We'd come in on a Saturday, we got ordering some lunch approved. We put on some music and we were, working towards a big client moment and we jammed and it wasn't not fun. So sometimes it's the tenor of the work itself. If we can regulate our own emotions, I write in the book about emotional reliability being sort of the precursor to fun. So if as a leader, we're not stressed out, we're not like demanding things of people and micromanaging, if we can keep it cool and create an environment where people actually are kind of having a good time, we can work simultaneously. So I think that's the first thing, and just in terms of the tenor of the work. The second thing is in terms of time. Yeah, sometimes if you work less, you get less done. That's absolutely true. And I know people say like, "Oh, work smarter, not harder," but you know what? Sometimes it's just literally a math problem. So, if there are times when you need to be working nights and weekends, I think the biggest question is that a moment or is that chronic? In the same way I think of it in terms of like inflammation in the body. You get a cut, right? And the cut in your organization is like, this thing messed up with a client, this thing messed up with a customer or the product launch. There's a cut, there's a rush of inflammation to the site to try and fix that thing. When your body does that, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a really good thing, right? You're bringing resources to the scene of the crime. And in an organization, sometimes you just have to do that. You're working hard and hopefully you're a generous leader and people are like, yeah, I'm going to show up for you. I'm going to show up for the business. This is what I've experienced. And, if we're all in it together, the problem in the body is chronic inflammation. And the problem in an organization is chronic overworking. When we assume from an organizational perspective that if you're not working nights and weekends, something is wrong, right? Because in that case, I would argue, well, you haven't bought those nights and weekends. You are actually in breach of the agreement that you made with employees. Unless, of course, I don't know, you started out by saying, like, look, this is a 100-hour a week job, in which case, to each their own. But if that's the case, then I would say you don't have a people problem. You have a business model problem. The fact that you cannot sustain a healthy business with whatever you can't the fact that you're not making the math work, that I'm receiving this much revenue, paying this much to employees for this much time, and the math is not mathing, then you have to fix your business problem first.
Mhm.
Okay, I've got like 27 more points, but let me stop there. um, yeah,
I think it's really helpful to hear you say that because I think that so often we go into organizations and the hope for reasons why people might hire us is that we just give a simple hack, like just help us try to figure out this thing that our employees can do for themselves. Maybe just get them through this workshop, give them this mindfulness app, do this thing, give them a little extra vacation, like make it the individual's responsibility to take care of themselves and to take a break, or make it the leader's problem to try to figure out, hey, how do I manage this group of 20, 30 people and prioritize all of their well-being while also making sure that we do all the things that we need to get done. And very seldomly are we actually tasked with saying, your business model is fundamentally broken and it's only successful if you exploit people. And is
right.
that the kind of human being you want to be? Like, do you want to be a business that is in the business of human exploitation? Which is a big, heavy thing to say to someone or have them think about. But I think it goes back to the earlier conversation we were having about morality and the why that this stuff is important to be able to focus on those big, scary, important questions to be able to ask.
Yeah. And I think it's important, like we talked about, it's important to understand where that extra time is coming from. Because as a leader, you're not going to see the sad kid watching their parent overwork and not spend the evening reading with them. Like I also write about No one is gonna care about my cholesterol more than me. No employer is going to care about it. I don't know, maybe there's, like, a discount to a gym and an employee benefit somewhere. Sure, but, like, my health is my responsibility, and so if I'm not protecting the time to exercise, no one's gonna protect it for me. So, yeah, I think first and foremost, it is an organizational issue. Like, what is the kind of business that you want to run, and what do you feel comfortable extracting from the world? Um, and then, because a lot of people don't live in those kinds of nice organizations, then yes, you have to go to all of those other it's not the first place to go, but you have to go to all of those others, like, as a manager, how do you wanna create a supportive, cozy team where amidst rough policies or a rough market, you can still create a place of safety? And you as an individual, what can you do if all the odds are against you? Because, sometimes they are.
It's hard to ask for kind of one piece of advice, but let's just go there. If you were talking to a manager who was really struggling to try to figure out how do I live in between those tensions of wanting to do right by my people and wanting to meet the demands that are being placed on me, what's the one piece of advice that you would give to that leader trying to navigate that tension?
Okay, I'm gonna cheat just a little bit. The one piece of advice, looking up and one piece looking down for lack
Great.
of better terms. So one piece looking up. A middle manager's job is to s I've heard the term like a shit umbrella, but essentially that's one way to think about it. But also it's their job to control the flow of work, because work, you know, at least in theory, is sort of like falling down waterfall style from above through all the OKRs. So a leader's job, one thing that they can do is not say, "No, my team is not taking that on," but be a really thoughtful negotiator. One where you're trying to do your best for the business, but a thoughtful negotiator about how and when and to what quality of work you are agreeing to. So take, for example, some senior manager is telling some manager, "Okay, we have, like, these 5 things to do." Well, the manager, instead of just saying yes or no, can say, "We can prioritize tasks 1 and 2 for the first 2 months, and then we're gonna start on the other tasks." Or, "We can do task 1, but we're gonna need the partnership of this other team over there." Or, "We can do task 3, but you know what? We're only gonna be able to get, like, a V1 ready, not, like, a deployable thing by this time." And ultimately, at best, it's a honest and helpful negotiation that's good for the team and for the business, because the business does not want deadlines that are missed and chaos ensuing and meetings upon meetings where you're trying to remedy things. So that's one thing, is that sort of how do you hold the backlog and thoughtfully deploy things? Um, when you're looking to the team, oh gosh, I have so many more than just one thing. Um, so one thing that you can do.
You do, for the record, have a whole entire book. So it's like
Okay,
it's helpful. It's helpful.
okay, yes, thank you. Okay, so in terms of time management, one thing that can be helpful is to structure the team's time top down. So I often do this in consulting teams. A lot of times we will block a 2-hour a day chunk where nobody is responsible for responding on Slack or email aside from me and the PM who's responsible to any client communications. But that's a heads down block. And it's not like go take a nap block, although if you had no work, I wouldn't be opposed. It's a block to simply like help people's brains function and to do the
Mhm.
deep work. Because if I'm managing the makers need making time. And then here's my last thing that I will just slip in. It's really my third thing, I guess. But uh, sometimes the best thing a leader can do is to really humanize the situation and be what I call the narrator for your team. I had one colleague who was telling me about this insane project she was on. She's like, and the leader is just saying, like, we're doing great, keep at it. And I'm like, this is an insane way to work. Can't we just say this is insane? And I was like, yeah, you should just. So I encouraged her to say to the rest of the team, like, this is not normal. If you are really burning out, the only thing worse than burning out is burning out and feeling alone. So if you can at least take that latter one off the table and as a leader say like, "Hey, we're running kind of hot. I'm kind of tired. Are you all kind of tired?" If you can humanize that, bring it into the conversation, now at least you feel like you are a cohesive team doing something hard together. It's the antidote, I think, to a lot of the loneliness and the loneliness research that we see so much in the workplace. That feeling of togetherness and honesty and humanity.
Feels like a good place to end, at least for now. There's so much more wisdom in this book. Again, the book is called Today Was Fun, a book about work, seriously. And Bree, where should people go if they want to be able to learn more about you and the various things that you do?
You can find me at my website, breegroff.com. So BREEGROFF.com. And from there, you can sign up to my Substack. You can find the book and buy the book. I hope that you do. And then LinkedIn, Instagram, all the other spots.
And of course, we'll put those links in the show notes and in our blog for this episode. Bree, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, for helping us find a little bit more humanity in the work that we do, in the work that happens at work and the work that happens outside of work. I really do give a huge shout out for all of the things that you say about caregiving and the meaningful work that is, that often doesn't get any credit as work in our lives. And so thank you. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Meaningful Work Matters. If you haven't already done so, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. And if this episode resonated with you, please take a moment to leave us a review. Your feedback helps us make this podcast better and reach more listeners. You can connect with me, Andrew Soren, on LinkedIn, or visit www.eubd.ca to learn more about Eudaimonic by Design. Finally, if what you heard today spoke to you, tell your colleagues and people in your community about our podcast. We really appreciate your support in making meaningful work matter. See you next time.